Admiral Thorne stood before the holographic display as the massive wrack armada positioned itself around Earth's orbit. 57 capital ships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash. The Galactic Empire had conquered 100 worlds before reaching humanity's doorstep, and they expected this conquest to be no different. "They've sent their terms of surrender," Lieutenant Hayes reported, her voice steady despite the tension filling the command center. "Standard Imperial protocol, complete disarmament, resource tribute, and integration into their empire as a protectorate." Thorne nodded, studying the enemy formation. The Vrak had never failed in their expansions. For 3 centuries, they had grown unchallenged across the stars, absorbing species after species with minimal resistance. Humanity would be their first mistake. "Send our response," Thorne ordered. Hayes hesitated. "Sir, are you certain?" The council voted. The council voted unanimously. Thorne's weathered face remained expressionless. "Send it." Hayes tapped at her console. The message was brief, a single word. Pray *. High Commander Drac of the Vrak Imperial Fleet received the human response with confusion. "That's all they sent?" he asked his communications officer. "Yes, High Commander, just the one word." Drac's facial ridges furrowed. In 300 years of conquest, no species had responded this way. Most begged, some attempted diplomacy. A few fought briefly before surrendering. None had ever sent a religious message. Perhaps a mistranslation, his second-in-command suggested. Perhaps. Drax settled into his command chair. Begin the standard approach. Target their military installations first, then governmental centers. The usual display of force should bring them to their senses. Yes, High Commander. The Vrak fleet began to move, spreading into their attack formation. Their sensors detected no significant movement from Earth's defensive platforms or their primitive fleet. The humans possessed only a dozen military vessels capable of space travel, none of which appeared to be mobilizing. Drac felt a flicker of disappointment. He had hoped the species that had progressed from primitive technology to space travel in less than 2 centuries might offer some resistance, some sport. "High Commander," his sensor officer called out suddenly, "I'm detecting energy readings from the lunar surface." Drac frowned. "The humans have no lunar installations capable of." The first of the hidden mass drivers activated. Hypersonic projectiles, simple tungsten rods accelerated to near relativistic speeds, tore through 3 Vrak vessels before their shields could react. The ships didn't explode, they simply ceased to exist, transformed into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Evasive maneuvers. Drax shouted as more mass drivers revealed themselves across the lunar surface. Simple, brutal kinetic weapons that the Vrak sensors had dismissed as mining equipment. As the Vrak fleet scattered, the human vessels finally moved. Not toward the Vrak armada, but away, retreating to a safe distance. Drac realized why a moment later when the orbital defense grid activated. The humans had hidden their true defensive capabilities, disguising weapon platforms as satellites and space debris. Thousands of them now powered up simultaneously, unleashing a coordinated barrage that overwhelmed the Vrak fleet's defensive systems. "Return fire," Drac ordered, but it was already too late. The Vrak had never developed defenses against this kind of assault because no species they had encountered fought this way, with hidden weapons, with deception, with overwhelming force applied in a single devastating strike. For the command center, Thorne watched as the Vrak fleet disintegrated. Of the 57 ships that had arrived, only 12 remained after the first coordinated strike. "They're attempting to regroup," Hayes reported. "Their remaining ships are forming a defensive perimeter." Thorne nodded. "Execute Phase 2. Throughout the solar system, automated factories that had been manufacturing munitions for decades activated their jump drives. Appearing at predetermined coordinates around the remaining Vrak vessels, they disgorged swarms of autonomous combat drones. Millions of them, simple machines with one purpose: to overwhelm and destroy. The Vrak had superior technology in many ways, but they had never needed to develop the kind of warfare humans had perfected over thousands of years of fighting each other. They had never faced an enemy that assumed defeat was inevitable and planned accordingly. High Commander Drac watched in horror as his remaining ships were enveloped by the drone swarms. The tiny machines bypassed shields by the simple expedient of moving slowly enough to pass through, then accelerating once inside the defensive perimeter. They attached to hull plating and detonated, thousands of small explosions that gradually tore the mighty Vrak vessels apart. "Send the surrender signal," Drac ordered, his voice hollow. Tell them we accept their terms, whatever they may be." His communications officer stared at him, mandibles slack with shock. The Vrak Empire had never surrendered. They had no protocols for it. "Now," Drac shouted. Admiral Thorne received the Vrak surrender with the same stoic expression he had worn throughout the battle. Victory had been expected. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this day, ever since their first deep space probes had detected the Vrak expanding toward Earth. "They're requesting terms," Hayes said. Thorne's response was immediate. Full withdrawal from Earth's space, return to their core systems, never approach human territory again. And if they refuse? Thorne glanced at the tactical display, where the automated factories were already producing another wave of drones, where the lunar mass drivers were reloading, where Earth's combined military forces, hidden and waiting, stood ready. Then they'll understand why we told them to pray. The Vrak Empire retreated. For the first time in their history, they abandoned their plans of conquest. Stories spread throughout the galaxy of the species that had defeated them, the humans who fought not with honor or according to the accepted rules of warfare, but with ruthless efficiency. And when other empires looked toward Earth, considering it as a potential conquest, they remembered the single word the humans had sent before annihilating the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Asterisk pray asterisk. They wisely decided to look elsewhere.